السلام عليكم شيخ. كيف حالك? Can you hear
وعليكم
me?
السلام ورحمة الله. الحمد لله. Sorry for the delay. We are ready now.
No problem شيخ. Are you ready? Okay,
Yeah.
Bismillah, Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen, wassalatu wassalam ala Rasulillah. Welcome to another podcast, a Muslim Morning Podcast. I'm your host Ismail Howell, and we are back with our Sheikh, our Ustaz Mara Tucker. How's your week been, Sheikh? How's everything?
Hectic. So I was getting I just want to get my top buttons done.
Mm, mm.
Everything's hectic, alhamdulillah, but we're getting there. We're getting there. We just started a fiqh of buyur or transactions this week,
Okay,
so it's just been a bit hectic getting that drummed up.
okay,
I think I
excellent.
mentioned to you before actually in the summer holiday we did the Dalil Talib, this book on fiqh, and we
Okay,
covered.
you finished the book? Did you finish it?
Yeah, so we finished the English translation of that book only has the first third translated, which is basically Tahara, purification,
Mm.
Salah, fasting, Zakah, Hajj, and Jihad. Just that translate. So
Yes.
that book we finished in the summer holiday. We're
Okay,
just continuing with that, and now we're on the book of Buyur, transactions and trade and whatnot. So
okay.
just
We're gonna
started that
speak
one.
about we're gonna speak about the new modern ways of learning. But what I want to start with more of the traditional way that Islam is taught, how
Yeah.
it is learnt, and how that has been a means to preserve the religion,
Hmm.
not only the text but the meaning of the text.
Yeah. Yeah.
So obviously we aspire to learn the religion properly, how it should be learnt and how it
Yeah.
should be taught. But our situation and our time means that we can't always do that. So if we can kind of mention how Islam is traditionally taught and how that was a means of preservation of the deen.
Hmm.
And it's important. And then we can kind of speak about the roles of the scholar, the student of knowledge, and the ordinary folk in regards to the obligations of learning, what to learn, how to learn, etc. And
Yeah.
then lastly, we'll speak about the current, because there are a lot of, you might say, institutions online that are now also teaching
Yeah.
Islamic subjects and how the pros and the cons of that, inshallah. So, barakallahu feekum, fadlan, Shaykh.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على رسوله الكريم وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين أما بعد. So with regards to the traditional way of learning, I think it's important to understand what that means. Maybe just move my camera or center. So most people, when they want to study, they pick a subject that they feel they are interested in, and they dive straight into that subject. And I think the methodology of learning should be taken from those who have already begun their learning or are the teachers themselves. So how does one learn? First thing is bitadarruj, in stages. We're not like at the time of the Sahaba whereby revelation has been revealed at the moment of time, and what we learn is literally what is current at the time. We live at the end of a 1,400-year legacy of scholars who have been authoring, teaching, writing, refining, updating, and so on and so forth for many years. So it comes to the methodology of teaching. It's not like we have to discover a new way of teaching. I mean, I guess you could discover something useful using modern technology, which is what we're going to discuss today. But in terms of the method, how you go about it, then it's something which has been discussed from the beginning, really.
Mm.
And what people need to understand is that when it comes to real knowledge, attaining knowledge, when it comes to studying knowledge, the goals need to be refined, need to be made clear. So if a person's goal is just, and I don't mean this to put anyone down, by the way, this is not to put anyone down, but if someone's goal is essentially entertainment, or to scratch an intellectual itch, or to just quench a curiosity, then yeah, by all means, jump into any lesson one feels to do so, and
Mm.
you will get that that buzz, that hit, that dopamine hit, and you think,
Mm.
yeah, I feel like I've learned something. But if
Yeah.
someone really wants to learn knowledge to the level whereby they retain that knowledge. This is the issue. Knowledge that is learnt, retained, and most importantly applied. Then one needs two things. Number one, they need to realize it's a long-term journey. It won't be a year or a single course or something like that. It's a long-term journey. I mean, I remember one when I used to teach Arabic, people used to ask me, "Oh, bro, how long would it take to learn Arabic?" I'm like, bruv, when does
no
it
end.
end?
Yeah.
There's no, or they'll ask me how many courses will I take before I can speak. I said, you have to say, look, what you're looking at there, what this shows me is that you feel is always it's a simple thing. You do X, Y, Z, and then you get the result, and then you move on to something else. That's a demonstration of just quenching a thirst, itching and scratching an itch, not actually learning. Learning, if someone's gonna go on the path of knowledge, it is literally a journey, a long, drawn out journey.
Lifetime journey.
The thing is, I won't say lifetime, because you can get to a point whereby you've learned enough for yourself. But the point is, it's still a journey, because there's so many factors which determines the length of that journey. Your dedication to the knowledge, what you do with the in between lessons, your own mental capacity and your own responsibilities, maybe as a husband, as a son, as whatever. There are many things that determines how long it will take. And maybe you may start today, stop next year, start the following year. It may be a long-term thing, but you have to basically keep at it. Anyway, so that's the first thing. So as for the tariqah, the method, the way,
Yes.
if I explain the way, then one would understand why it will take some time. So let's take, I mean, as you know, I'm doing fiqh this next couple of weeks. So let's talk about fiqh, for example. If someone wanted to study Islamic law, and they can study anything. They can study aqidah, belief, they can study history, they can study many things. But if one wanted to study, what I'm going to explain here is the same for all the sciences. If one wanted to study Islamic law, the first thing they need to do is know where the mabadi are, the beginnings, the source, because it's not source material, the simplified, broken down, childlike material. Because I even had this the other day, actually, just a few days ago. One brother said he wants to study fiqh, and he's asking me about Mughni. Mughni is like a very complex comparative fiqh book, which is, how many volumes is it? 13 volumes. And I said, bro, that's not there's
He's just starting now. He's just starting on his path. Yeah.
No, he's not just starting, but even then, Mughni is not even like a book like that, where even a student of knowledge will sit down and just read. It's a very dense book, maybe even taken as a reference book. But if you actually want to study it, it's something that is way down the line. Like you're looking like maybe 10 years, 5 years plus of intense study. I said, bro, you need to start very simply. Like I said, with something like Dalil al-Talib. Now, why am I mentioning this book here? Other than just a plug for the book. I love the book. Because it's literally very simple. I mean, I can just show you how simple it is. Let me find something. Look. As you can see, and I'm trying to get the light out of the way. Hold on. There you go.
Yeah, that's it. As
you can see, very simple. Like, here's a line, and then one word, and another word, and then another word. So it's breaking down the mas'ala into small, bite-sized chunks.
Yes.
It looks like a big book, and it's only really made big because they spread it out. The checker kind of expanded it in that kind of bulletin point kind of form, because the actual book is a bit smaller. But the point is that it's just explaining the topic. There's no evidence. There's no Quran. There's no Sunnah. It's just explaining the evidence. Now, people might say, but brother, I want to study the Quran and Sunnah. I believe in the Quran and Sunnah. This on the Salaf al-Salih. And there's no one's denying that, brother. No one's denying that. I mean, do you think that this book wasn't authored on the Quran and Sunnah? But the point here is, before you go down that route of the Quran and Sunnah, which is basically where the information was extracted from, you need to first understand the topic at hand.
Yes.
Being able to mentally define refine, and understand the topic. What are we actually discussing? What are we talking about? Once you have a good understanding of the masail, of the issues, then we can expand upon the evidence, why they said what they said. Is it even valid or invalid? We can go down that route, but first you need to understand the topic. And there's a phrase in book called تحقيق المناط, or sorry, تحرير محل النزاع, where you refine the topic of discussion or dispute.
Can I interject here, Sheikh?
One last point.
Fine.
And you must do that for fiqh as a whole, as in from the beginning of tahara, of purification, all the way to the end, which deals with judicial law. Now, the reason why you do that is so that you have, by the end of that, which you can achieve back in maybe about a year and a half, what you do by the end of that is that you have a good understanding of the Sharia as a whole.
Yeah.
So once you have a good understanding of the Sharia as a whole, then you can now dig into the details. Once you've got the topic and you understand the topic at hand, then you can go into the details. Once you know what salam is, once you know what isti'ara is, once you know what qada is, and khulu' and ila and li'an, once you know what all these terms mean and the definition and where it applies and where it's not applies, and once you understand the Sharia as a whole, then you can dig into the details. But my point is that if the reason why you do this, you start in the beginning, is that when you now want to dig into the details, you're not scratching your head thinking, okay, what's he talking about? Because you know what he's talking about.
Yes.
But yeah,
you now find a delil. Okay, so that book, for example, is a book that, just so you want to put it in context now. So I'm starting my path of learning the deen. I'll go to a masjid or a class. We're going to start off that book, and the teacher is going to teach me the fundamentals, the obligations of my religion in a general way, right?
Yeah.
So at this stage, or this is my stage, the dalil is not there, you could say, just the subject matter, but the dalil is not there. So am I now, you could say I'm making taqleed of my ustad, my teacher?
Yeah. Well,
and
what go on.
Do you understand? So if this is because, I mean, maybe the teacher may give the dalil, or maybe not. He's just going to teach you the branches of knowledge in this particular subject. So at this stage, for the ordinary person, he goes to the masjid, sits down, is teaching you the condition of the prayer, fasting, your 5 pillars, zakat, whatever. He may not give you the dalil, the evidence. This is from this ayah, or this is from this hadith, etc., etc. So in that level, the people who are learning at this level, you could say they are blindly following the sheikh in regards to this particular topic, and that is enough for you.
Well, that's the thing, because like I said, if you're it comes back to what I said at the beginning of intention.
Yes.
Why are you studying? If you're studying for the purpose of growing your understanding of the religion, and later being able to have a firm ground in this, then studying a book like Dilal al-Talib, for example, and completing it,
yes,
is not a topic. I don't think it's a question of taqleed or blind following, because not you don't even necessarily have to do anything or change anything about yourself. Meaning, you're studying what the book says. That doesn't mean you have to follow the book. Meaning that, imagine you studied and you read Sheikh Albani's book on Salah, Sifat Salat al-Nabi, the description of the Prophet's prayer, and you pray a certain way. And this book actually says you do something another way. Does that mean you have to follow the book? Well, not really, because you've already studied at some level how to pray, and that's basically how you pray. But now what you're doing is that you are going on a path of seeking knowledge, and you want to understand, what does this author have to say? What does this author wrote, and what is his madhab or understanding of fiqh? So now you've finished the book and you understand what he is saying, then you can branch out and to say, okay, why did he say what he said? What evidence does he bring to say what he said? And you're developing yourself. And then as you're progressing further and further, then you start to scratch the surface of, you may make understanding, you may make the clarity, and then you may make a change or not make a change, or make an adjustment or not make an adjustment. My point is, in saying that, is that just because you studied the book of fiqh, it doesn't actually mean you have to follow the book of fiqh. You see what I'm saying? Because the studying and the following are two separate questions. There are many
Yeah.
things in the Hanbali madhab. I even teach. I don't necessarily follow it. For example, inside that same book itself, when
Mhm.
you pray, you
Mhm.
place your right hand and your left hand underneath your belly button, like the Hanafis.
Yes.
I don't do that, and I've never done that. Although I've
Yeah.
studied this book and I studied many books of the Hanabila, but I don't. I'm not. No, I don't do that. Nor am I obliged to do that because
Yes.
it hasn't come to me anything convincing to
Mhm.
change what I love from Sheikh Albani.
Okay, Sheikh, and this is because I want to kind of like break it down. So, for example, the person at the beginning stage, he is learning this book from his teacher, and he's given the conditions of the salah and zakat and siyam or whatever without dalil. He's just learning the basics,
Yeah.
and at that level, this person you could say uh, is that a general person. He does at this particular level. He cannot now go to a person saying, "Okay, why are you praying with your hands on your chest? You should be praying with your hands below your navel."
Mhm.
All right.
So basically,
Does he have a and we're talking about the army, we're talking about the
yeah.
general folk. He's starting off his path to knowledge and he's learning these short and stuff. Does he have a right now to criticize? Because he might go to another masjid and see people praying with their hands on their chest. And he might believe that, well, my teacher told me this, you guys are wrong. Does he have a right to say that?
Well, no, because number one,
Mm-hmm.
he's only heard what someone else has said.
Mm-hmm.
He hasn't really got. He really can't. He can't even have any kind of conviction
Mm-hmm.
as to what is right or wrong, or what should or should not happen. The
Mm-hmm.
best he can say is, I studied in this book X, Y, and Z.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe you want to look into that because it's inside the book of fiqh and this is what the alim said. But
Yeah.
you can't really have jazm. You can't really have
Conviction that
yaqeen and
you're
surety that this is the truth because he hasn't. The thing is, he hasn't studied. He hasn't come across that surety yet. I mean, how can you? It's like
yeah.
it's like imagine you're a private investigator, yeah,
Mm.
and you came to a crime scene as a murder,
Mm.
and obviously you have no idea what's going on. You just called to the scene and you came to the scene. You saw blood on the floor. You see a body on the side here. You see a guy over there. You see this river. So you just
Yes.
seeing what's going around. You spoke to one
Yes.
witness. What happened? He said, "Yeah, I came in and I saw this." I spoke to another guy. What happened?
Mm.
Yeah, he came into that. So if I ask the investigator what happened,
Yes.
you see what I'm saying? He can only
Mm.
really tell you what someone else has said. He doesn't
Yes.
really
Got
know
you.
at all what
Got you.
happened.
Mm.
So maybe later on, after the investigation progresses,
Mm.
we look at the DNA, what happened in the weapon, the
Mm.
fingerprints, and we capture some CCTV. We're building the case now. The case is
Mm.
becoming stronger.
Mm.
Now I asked the investigator, okay, what happened? Now you can
Yes.
give us the detail. Yeah, this what happened. The assailant came in at this time and 0800 hours, and then an argument ensued, and then he drew a weapon,
Mm.
and he stabbed the person, which was captured on a camera. Now he can speak with definitive knowledge because he
Yes.
has that knowledge. But
Mm.
initially, when I asked him, all he could say was, "Yeah, well, it's been reported,
Mm.
it was said, so and so witnessed." I mean, you
Yes.
can only say what was surface related to you, which is basically what a
Mm.
person
Mm.
does at the beginning of his knowledge. You can only really relate what was related to him. So Sheikh so
Yeah.
said, or Sheikh so said, I don't know, but I mean that's something to look into. But to come in with full force,
Mm.
that is basically like saying, that what many of us do. We come to the scene
Yes.
of a crime, we see someone there. Oh, he did it. Let's kill him. No, you can't
I
do
mean,
that.
we joke, but this is very, very important because I remember at the beginning of my learning where we was taught this is Sifat Salat and Nabi, this is how to pray. So
Yeah,
wherever we went, wherever masjid we went, we'll be looking at people strange, like, what are you praying like that for?
yeah,
When really we just read a book in English. It had a delil there. You might say it had a hadith or whatever, but we don't know Arabic. So in that situation, we were blind followers, but we thought we had the conviction to go into any masjid and say, this is wrong. You must pray with your hands on your chest. You must do foot to foot. You must say Amin loudly. You must. So in order to, and this is the point, the argument between the army Muslims, the general Muslims, we go from masjid to masjid. I'm feeling very, I'm energetic. I'm a new Muslim, or I got some knowledge now, just to put us in our place, so we don't cause fitna, and also so that we respect the other Muslims who may be doing things differently and not cause argument. When really, if you know your place, you're just gonna say, well, okay, I'm a Mukhalid, let me just get on with it. Let me respect his opinion. I don't know where he's coming from. I don't know his delil in order to say something. But I think that's a big issue currently.
Well,
Where
this is where what we do now. We're trying to explain what's the path of seeking
yes,
knowledge, but not just laying out the path, but explaining why that path exists.
mm,
So again, when we study a madhab or we study a book of fiqh, whatever it is, and we only focusing on the issues at hand, the mas'ala, the topics, the purpose of that is so that you have an understanding of what's going on. So, for example, when for example, the issue of praying, when it comes to shortening our salah and combining our salah, many people think that shortening and praying is the same thing, because in most cases, when you're traveling, you shorten and you combine. But when you study the books of fiqh, for example, you realize that actually the issue related to shortening is a separate topic to the issue of combining. You can combine and not shorten, and you can shorten and not combine. They actually are separate topics. And then you have the conditions that allow you to combine, and you have the things that prevent you from combining. When you start refining down, dig down into the details of things and understand this topic on a greater level, then when it comes to evidence, you can start seeing where the evidence slot in or where they don't slot in. It depends on what the topic is, but those things take time. And one very important point, actually, which again comes down to, again, drawing back to the example of the private investigator or the investigator, the sergeant, whoever's investigating the crime. Sometimes evidence is in multiple different locations. You got evidence from witness, you have evidence from blood, you have evidence from DNA, you have evidence from fingerprint, you have evidence from CCTV. There are different evidences related to different things. Maybe even evidence related to experience. Maybe previous cases help you with a current case. Maybe a previous conviction helps with this current situation. There are certain times things that are may seem to be unrelated to the topic at hand, which are very much related to the topic at hand, which you won't know unless you have the overall picture. So it's possible that evidence used in zakah is actually also used in trade, a totally different topic. But because you never studied trade, it may be difficult for you to understand fully the topic of zakat. It makes sense because you haven't got a full picture of the sharia. You've only got a half picture, a juz. So by studying the sharia as a whole, gives you the full picture. Or at least a more fuller picture, I have to say. Not full picture, gives you a more fuller picture. Once you have a more fuller picture, then you can dig down deep. But again, we're just using as an example the sharia. It could be anything. It could be Arabic grammar. It could be balagha. It could be history. It could be, for example, let's take language. Again, if you wanted to study the Arabic language or grammar, you go to a book like Al-Jurumiyya, which is basically a book of Arabic grammar. Very simple, just simple words. There's no evidence inside there. There's no shuhud or poems or whatnot. There's none of that. It's just, the definition of mubtada, definition of khabar, definition of marfu'. From the beginning all the way to the end. Once you've done that, then you can dig in deeper. We go into a more advanced book, Qatar Nada. Then we go to the explanation. Then we go to Alf ibn Malik. Then we can dig deeper and deeper and deeper. But you have to start first at the very simple book with just the explanation of definitions, understanding the issue, and move on. Same thing with Usul al-Fiqh. We have Waraqat. Same thing with Al-Hadith. You have Bayquniya. You have Nukhbat al-Fikr. You have each science. You have the simple book that explains the topic and in a nice, concise manner. No evidence, no discussion, no difference of opinion even. Just a simple one opinion and whatnot. And the joke is we do this all the time. We do it even in secular studies. For example, everyone knows there's atoms. There's these little balls that you have the proton and the neutron and you have the electron going around it. That's all nonsense. No scientist accepts that atoms are balls. But those are used as simplified models for simplified subject, to get you the idea that there are things like particles or points in time and space that move around. So use that simple basic model. When you go to university, you realize, okay, actually it's more about probability.
Yeah.
more complex than that. There's different models, the different, and you
Okay,
expand.
so just, and I'm probably repeating myself over again. The person who's at the beginning, journey of his knowledge, you ain't arguing with nobody because you don't know the dalil. You just know the what to do and what not to do
Yeah,
without the dalil behind it. So you have no base. You have no basis now to go and argue. You see someone praying with his hands up wherever, unless I suppose there's a situation. Okay, this is clearly not from the deen at all. Then that's a different argument. But I think ikhtilaf, these sort of differences amongst the army people, the normal people. You can't argue your point, or you can't have yaqeen on your point unless you have the little behind it.
that is that you use a key word here. You can't have yaqeen, you can't have surety. So the simple answer to that is with the question itself. How could you possibly have such a definitive and conclusive opinion when you just started learning? It's basically that. How could you possibly think you know all the situation, you know the whole story, when you just started to learn? You have no idea what the other people said and what their evidence is and their counter arguments and whatnot. You have none of it. You have no idea. So how could you possibly be so adamant and fervent in your opinion on something so weak, fundamentally weak? I mean, it's not like your things. We're not saying you're ignorant, jahil, attaqillah. We're just saying be honest with yourself. It doesn't matter if you're a scholar or if you're an army. Every situation has you could say the title heading, and then it has the subject matter. Every subject has the details and it has the overall overview. You can't expect to have a deep understanding unless you've gone deeper, and that takes time. So yeah.
Okay, let's progress and check the next step. For example, you have individual learning, and then you have learning in an institute, an organized institute like a university. What would you say are the differences and the benefits and the pros and cons of those two structures? Like you might have, for example, someone who attends a masjid, sits down with an alim, a sheikh, and learns certain books from him. And then you have an individual who goes to an institution like a university. What are the pros and cons and what is the natija after? What is the result afterwards? And what level are they at in regards to giving instruction, being a teacher now, becoming a teacher, and also being able to get to the dalil behind whatever issues at hand?
So the way I see this, I mean, I think we have to take a little journey, a little historical journey to the Turuq. So obviously, at the time of the Sahaba, the companions were individuals. They were just people, great people, the best of people, but they were just people. And as in, they weren't necessarily college graduate, with PGC on teaching pedagogy. They were just people, individuals, and they learned from the best of teachers, the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So obviously they learned and picked up that. But the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam himself wasn't a university graduate teacher with a certain pedagogy. He was again an individual. But what reason I'm saying that is because the way he taught was a practical knowledge. It was a life knowledge. It was teaching Islam to people who were actually implementing it live, real. It's a bit like saying almost like an apprentice student and teacher kind of relationship. Like you want to learn, you want to go to a garage and say, yeah, I want to learn to fix cars. Can I shadow you and learn to fix cars? So you're kind of learning on the job. And that's basically what the Messenger of Allah and the Sahaba and people at the time were doing. They would have lessons in durus. Even specifically, Messenger of Allah, the lessons he was teaching were actually practical. They'll be walking and they'll get a lesson. They'll be sitting down and see something, there'll be a lesson. They'll be traveling, there'll be a lesson. They'll be sitting down and eating, there'll be a lesson. The lesson was literally woven within the fabric of life. And the Sahaba learned about that, learned about the manners, learned about all that kind of stuff. And this is, when it comes to Islam, the way in which our children learn Islam, or I guess from their parents, learn it practically, which is why I think parents need to recognize that teaching our children Islam is not about sending them to the madrasa. It's about this mode of learning, the practical, real life mode of learning. If you as a parent are not doing X, Y, and Z, and you expect your kids to do it, you're giving them mixed messages. The Messenger of
Gotcha.
Allah told the Sahaba, and he himself did. So it was a life lesson. Then we had obviously the halaqat, the circles, the gatherings, and we exchanged knowledge and whatnot and taught it. And that's how the companions did so, and the tabi'in, their students did so in certain majalis after salah at certain times, whatnot. They'll agree. But it was an impersonal kind of lesson, kind of stuff. Moving fast forward. Obviously, at some point, human beings naturally seek order, structure, and at some point,
better ways of doing things. You might say better ways of doing things.
I mean, the thing is,
you have
I don't use
a
the word
number of.
better because I don't use the word better because it might be better in certain contexts, which will come in a minute. But the point is, mankind wants to organize. The key word here is efficiency. That's what it is.
Okay.
The key word here is efficiency.
Mm-hmm.
How can I achieve more by doing less? That is the key. So at some point in the history of mankind, in Egypt, I think it was, the concept of a university became a thing, where you come together in a certain building. We have organized time, an organized place, an organized curriculum that we follow. So when a person passes through these walls, we kind of know what they've achieved because they're the same curriculum, the same teachers, the same whatnot. So that's an example. That's an example of organizing what one learns, as opposed to having the dars. I'm talking about whatever the lesson of the day happens to be. So this is the kind of the beginnings of university learning, and I think Azhar was one of the first that kind of became. It's been one of the longest standing universities in history, I think, so far. And again, over time, this idea of schools developed, going to a certain place, send your kids, to a certain structure. So the idea of sending your children or going to a person or traveling for knowledge was there from the beginning. Salman al-Farisi, one of the Sahaba, traveled to find knowledge, and he found the Messenger of Allah. So the traveling for knowledge was always there. But traveling to a particular location where others have traveled and we have a structured lesson and whatnot, this became a thing where we have schools now. And this kind of structure became a thing. And then we have this whole idea where a person has a headmaster and he employs teachers, and we have an institute. So now we have this thing developing over time, these institutions developing over time to I would say, increase efficiency. Efficiency in learning, structure in learning. Fast forward now to today, or not to today. Fast forward to, let's say, the 70s, 80s, 90s. Again, I choose that time. Well, we still have this I would say parallel worlds. The idea of traveling to seek a knowledge of a sheikh in the masjid, that still existed. To this day, it still exists. And people treat that as a more traditional form of learning. Sit down with the sheikh, more impersonal. The sheikh knows you, you know the sheikh. You sit down, you go for certain books, and you learn with the sheikh, and you spend time with the sheikh, and you learn his manners, you learn his adab and whatnot. And I'll kind of put that parallel to almost like a private physician, like a doctor. You go to a doctor, he's known. You go to his practice, and you have that personal relationship with your doctor. He knows you, you know him. He knows your family. That's a kind of personal thing. But then you have like the organized institution, which is like your hospital. You don't particularly know the doctors, or people go there. So you have these kind of parallel things that existed, and you have that even like in Medina. So I think it was Ibn Baz or maybe others who founded the Islamic University Medina, which is kind of try to have that organized structure again of universities, where again you travel to a particular building, and that building will be the place where you learn your structured course. So these kind of things both existed and both have their virtues. The virtue of the sitting with the sheikh has that personal element to it that you'd miss in university. So you get to know the sheikh, he knows you, he knows how you absorb knowledge, he kind of moves at your pace or the pace of those in that smaller circle. You learn from him the manners, you learn from him his timings. There's more time to ask questions, maybe, because we're not defined, or we're not strangled to a particular time frame. Whether the book takes a month or 2 months, the sheikh is more flexible in that regard. So there's that element. But then you have the university, whereby is more defined. It's known. We know that when you go in there, this is what you have to study. You have exams. We can measure what you've learnt in a way which is uniform across the board. Once you finish that institution, we can say, okay, he's finished that institution. He got this grade. We can say he's attained this particular knowledge. Whereby on the first element, you have to kind of ask the sheikh, what do you reckon? That's kind of a subjective thing. So they both have their appeals. I wouldn't say one is better than the other, because, like I said, some is better in some things, and one is better than other things. If anything, maybe do both. Why not? Why not go to university and then
and
sit with
then
or vice versa? You know.
But if you look some point from the traditional way of having that one-to-one, or maybe it's you and 5 other students or 10 other students, it's more of a personal tarbiyah, personal learning. I mean, obviously you hear from Yemen that you maybe have the sheikh and then you have maybe 500 students sitting with the sheikh. That's traditional, but it's a bigger number. What you say with what comes to your mind about the pros and cons of both halaqat, you might say?
So the pros, So let's do the more traditional.
Yeah.
The pros of that, which I've already mentioned, you get the more impersonal, direct approach to the sheikh. At least some degree, you learn more about his manners. You kind of you avoid, I would say, what's called the tashwish, the distractions of multiple different approaches, because you're doing one particular scholar or one particular sheikh. You gotta learn the approach before you move to another approach. You have more focus, more dedication to the craft. But I guess the cons of that is that if you don't diversify in your learning, meaning that you studied with the sheikh for a number of years, how you studied with other mashaykh, have you traveled to other people to learn about what their approaches and whatnot? If you haven't done that and you just only studied with one sheikh, then essentially you just become a carbon copy of the sheikh. Maybe the sheikh is a good person to copy. There's nothing wrong with that. Maybe being a carbon copy of him is a good thing. But the point is, you're still very refined to what he has just said in one particular point, unless you've traveled a bit more and spent time with other people to can diversify and learn. University, from the back, because you have multiple teachers, you already have that approach of diversification. But in that, again, you lack that focus. So in university, again, you have the issue of structure, you have the issue of having your roadmap laid out for you clearly. I'm going to be here for 4 years. The 4 year, I can't even plan. After the 4 years, I'm going to do this, and after that, I'm going to do that. You can even plan out your life. Whereas in the first approach, there is no real plan like that. Really, you just
don't know. You don't know how long it's going to take to study a certain book.
And another one of the pros and cons, I would say, from different approaches is unrelated to the student, also unrelated to the teacher and even the subject, is the atmosphere. Those who have gone to the sheikh to sit down with him, there's no qualification at the end of it, really, like that. I mean, you might get a tazkiyah, you may get a letter of recommendation, but there's no kind of, only those who are there are those who are dedicated to the knowledge, and those who are not dedicated to knowledge will come and then they'll go. University, on the other hand, because it's a university, there's a qualification, then there is a dunya element to it, whereby the quality of the students are now different. I mean, just an example, I remember when I was in Medina University, and this is sad to say, but there was one student in my class who openly admitted he's only in university to get the stipend, the money that we get to look after yourself, and they're going to save up a stipend so then they can come to England and get a job in UK. So the quality of the students and the environment is different. You have people who are there just to get a job, just want to get the Sharia degree so they can get a nice job in the police force or some kind of firm. So the quality of the students and the environment is different in the university.
Different. Yes,
you get a thing, but that's the university approach.
Yes,
and the sheikh approach, and both of them are good. Both of them have their virtues, and both of them have their challenges to thing. But I think fast forward to today.
Can I just cut you there?
Yeah, go for
it. What? So, for example, we have university student. He's done his university studies. He's come out with a, what do you call it? A degree in Sharia or Hadith or Quran. What now is this person's level of knowledge? It all depends, obviously, how much you've put into your studies. But when he comes back to his community to teach, what level is he at? and how shall he now teach his community? What is his kind of position in the community when it comes back to teaching?
I mean, generally speaking, I would say that whether you did the university approach or you did the sit with the sheikh approach, both of them have something that those who didn't have they take either approach don't have. That's one thing we need to recognize. Whether a person got A grade or C grade or even a D grade, the fact is they tried something, and whatever they got is still more than those who haven't got anything. I think that's the first thing. And then as for the level that they've got, that is really down to the individual.
Yeah.
And I say that really honestly because I've met people who have done both approaches. Some of them are ajib, they are amazing people, as in what they've learned is amazing in that space of time. And some went out almost the same or if not worse when they came in. So it really just depends on who the individual is and what they've achieved. And unfortunately, well, not unfortunately, but it's just what it is. We have to also recognize that a person's actual abilities plays a big role in that as well. It does play a big role, and that's just what it is. It's like anything. It's like any kind of. It's like even like sports. Some people have physical limitations in terms of how much they can achieve, even in the sport. For example, Mike Tyson was apparently a great boxer, but no doubt, best believe that a lot of his ability came from genetics. It's just what it is. We can't we can't overlook that a large part of whatever we achieve, whether it's seeking knowledge, making business, whatnot, is from Allah's bounty. He gives some to some and does give others some to others. That's what it is. So first and foremost, us in the West, the awam, the layman in the West, who has people who've gone out to travel and they've come back now to teach.
Yes.
They all need to recognize that they've gone out, they've done something, and they've come back. Whether they've done a lot or a little, they still did something. So they deserve the base level of respect.
Yeah.
And I guess over time you learn how much they have learned from their delivery and whatnot. You can look at their grades. If they achieve a high grade is there to determine how much they've retained. So if they got a good grade in their university degree, then we can say, okay, alhamdulillah. At the very least, he's demonstrated that at the point of the exam, he performed. Whether he retained that after years, whether he expanded upon that later on, we don't know. But at the point of the exam, the level that the scholars defined of that degree, they achieved that degree. Or maybe they didn't. Maybe they failed and they didn't achieve that. So we can say, okay, whatever he achieved after the exams, whatever he achieved outside the university is actually, we don't know. But from the level of the university, he hasn't achieved or hasn't, or whatever case may be. So these things we can't, my point is we can't ignore the shahada. That's my point. University, some people do that, by the way. Some people say, oh, University of Medina, it's just a curriculum and everyone comes and goes. Yeah, fair enough. But you can't ignore the shahada, because that's like saying a person passed his driving test, but he still can't drive. Bro, you can't say you can't drive. A person who can't drive can't pass the test. That's just a fact. Unless you paid someone to get the certificate. Maybe he can't drive as good as you, but you can't say man can't drive. Whether he's a good driver or okay driver, maybe what he does after that will define that or expand upon that. But you can't deny the baseline.
Can you become a, because we're talking about moving up the ranks, you can say, like moving from junior person to a student of knowledge. Can you, how can you say officially, I don't know if it's officially, but be a student of knowledge without Arabic language? Is it possible to attain, to call yourself or be a student of knowledge, ustadh, teaching Islamic studies, without Arabic language?
So interesting topic. So there was, I think it was Serbia. I think it was the Serbians. This is a bit off topic, but the Serbians, there was, I think it was the Serbians. I'm not sure the actual nation, but there was, I think the Serbians, or anyway, it's relevant, the details. But anyway, in the past, there was they wanted to, they were very nationalistic and were proud of their culture and their language and whatnot. But most, if not all, of the material to do with engineering, medicine, that kind of sciences were written in German. So the tradition at the time that if you wanted to study the sciences, you learnt German to study the sciences. And then someone came along and said, no, why should we have to learn German we should do our own. You know, we have our own language, our own culture. Why should we go and adopt another person's culture to learn the sciences? We should learn the sciences based on our own material, which is what
Yes.
I think one of the politicians, what they pushed, and then they moved in that direction. They stopped using German material and they stopped making a curriculum requirement to learn German in the schools. And what happened is they set back that nation generations, because what happened was no matter what they learnt, even in the material that was available in their language, they weren't able to go beyond the little that was available in their own language. They weren't able to expand beyond the source material or that they had in schools. So that limited and hindered a whole nation of people. Bringing that to our topic here, and as you can see here, there's I mean, just the context. We've got like books from all the way over here, all the way to over here, and this is just a fraction of knowledge that's out there, and all that's in Arabic. So if you're studying Islam and you've studied the basic fiqh and whatnot and whatever, and tafsir al-Quran in English, for example, and you got the basic knowledge, and you want to expand upon that knowledge, you want to understand different opinions of that knowledge, you want to understand the evidence of that knowledge, you can't.
Gotcha.
You can't even go beyond what the curriculum you've been given, and you're hindered. So if someone says to you, "Oh, brother, you don't need Arabic to study Islam," no, you don't need Arabic to learn your basics as an individual, but to be a student of knowledge, where you scratch beyond the surface of being told what to do and just do, you do need Arabic language. You must need Arabic language, because you can't access the sources without a language. Now, could it be possible let's take a scenario. Imagine there's a big effort in the UK or America to translate all the works into English, so that you can access. You don't have to burden the student with the Arabic language. And then you can say, okay, brother, you made a claim that you can't be a student of knowledge unless you know Arabic, but not all the books are translated. So what do you say now? I would say still you need the Arabic language. Why? Because the evidence, the bedrock, all of this here is built upon the Quran and Sunnah. The extraction, what was extracted, all came from the Quran and Sunnah. And the Quran and Sunnah was in the Arabic language. And most of the principles, even, or many of the principles that govern how you extract information is built on the Arabic language. Is it a fi'l amr? Is it an order verb? Is it a masdar? Is you know, all these
the meaning of words as well. How you can interpret
even the meaning of words, they come back to the Arabic language. So for example, the whole controversy about Allah rising above his arsh, the word istiwa. They go back to the poems of the Jahili, the pre-Islamic poems, and look, how do they use the word istiwa to understand what the word means? You can't translate that.
Yes.
Because translation means interpretation. So if someone wants to say, I want to be a student of knowledge but not know Arabic language, no. You need the Arabic language before you can even attempt to be a student of knowledge. So basically, your first step would be to learn Arabic language. Now, that doesn't mean you can't begin to study.
Yes, you
can begin to study, but I would say a larger chunk of your studies, let's say 60%, maybe even 70% of your time needs to be in Arabic language. Once you gain a good ground in the language, then maybe you can start changing the scales, maybe make Arabic now 30%, 20%, and maybe even stop. But at the beginning, a larger chunk has to be the boring mubtada and khabar and the fi'l fa'il and bihi and all that grammar stuff.
I think one of what is very important is how the ordinary people see the teacher, whether the teacher be teaching online, which we're gonna get to, or the teacher in the masjid, or someone giving some advice. That if this person is quoting the dalil but doesn't know Arabic, how do you not fall into the mistake of learning from people who are not qualified to teach, or people who are maybe inadvertently causing a fitna where the person doesn't know the whole picture concerning the mas'ala, concerning the issue, just so that the ordinary person doesn't fall into those mistakes or putting someone in a position which they're not due to be, just the fact that, well, is he a teacher? Is he a student knowledge? Has he done his traditional learning? Has he gone to university? Because I think this is a big problem, which we're going to get to, hopefully, see about people teaching online. But one of the foundations is you need to have the Arabic language and have studied in some kind of institute, or have studied traditionally to a certain level.
You know what's interesting?
Mm.
You see people who I would say follow scholars or follow people who are not really learned people in the deen.
Mhm.
I have to wonder and ask myself, are they sincere and genuine in what they do, what they say? When I say that is, so if a person had a lump, some part of their body, they had a lump, on their body, I want to find out, is it cancerous, is this is not that, or they're worried about their health, and they went to a doctor, and there was a doctor who was like in his 50s, got many years experience and blah 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 blah. And there's another doctor who just finished medical school and said he's on practice somewhere else, and he's saying the other doctor who's older is wrong and this is the reason why and blah blah blah. People would not really go to the younger one; they'll go to the older one because their life is on the line. But for some reason, when it comes to the religion of Islam, they'll go to someone else who quite clearly hasn't really proven their skill set, if that makes sense. And one of the even someone, I can't remember who it was, mentioned that when they went to Syria and it was engaged in some of the people who were involved in ISIS, they noticed that a lot of their scholars, their muftis, were young people. They were shabab, like in their 20s and that. And they were calling other scholars who were in their 50s and 60s and whatnot, retirees, calling them scholars for dollars and whatnot. And I'm saying, I wonder, what, are they really serious with their deen? Because you wouldn't do that with your health, with your
Yes.
not even with your finances. Even, I mean, look at that. That's another example. People look at me and they see the black base. Oh, this guy, what does he know about finance? What does he know about money and whatnot?
Yeah.
We got people like the central bank that they're saying that, you know, this that, and the other. Why listen to this young kid for? Which is it's a sound argument.
Yeah.
It's a sound argument. But
Yeah.
when it comes to like money and health and things that actually affect the dunya things,
The
people become
dunya. We're very
serious,
cautious. Very cautious.
very cautious. We want qualifications, experience, all these kind of things.
Yeah.
When it comes to deen, we're like, oh yeah, he studied with so and so in some markaz for a couple of years, and yeah,
Yeah.
boom, we go for it. And I find that really strange. I find it really strange. But back to the issue of your question. So, the issue of seeking knowledge, like I said, the issue of a person seeking knowledge, we have to understand that there is a tariqah, there is a
Yes.
way, and when it comes to us as an army, we can ask those who have certain sought knowledge and have graduated. So I would say, for example, back to the issue of the two methods.
Yeah.
We have the one with the scholar, sat with the scholar. How would you know he is qualified? The scholar himself. The
Yes.
scholar is the one who graduates him.
Mm-hmm.
So he would say, yeah, he is a good student. I recommend him. He sat with me and he knows. And again, it's subjective qualification because it's one individual, but it's still the qualification. And some people call it ijaza. Have you got ijaza? That was a traditional form of
Yeah.
qualification.
You have a reference. Yeah. Yeah.
A reference, excellent. So ijaza was the traditional form of qualifications. Then you have the
University, you're saying?
University,
Shahada.
whereby it's not. I don't actually know the person who marked his exam or even wrote the exam, but I know as an institute, it's monitored by scholars and they've put certain guidelines and thresholds. And if a person graduates, then they reach that threshold. So that is the ijaza. So people say to you, "Have you got ijaza from so-and-so scholar?" Which I find funny sometimes because you say, "Oh, I graduated from University of Medina." Like, "Oh yeah, but have you got ijaza?" I mean, so what's the graduation mean then? what does the certificate mean if it's not ijaza? Both are ijazas, but one is an ijaza from the traditional form or the classical form, and the other one is ijaza from a more institutionalized form.
Yeah.
And both have their roles to play, and both have their things, and both could be useless if the person at the end of it is an innovator or he wastes his time, or or both could be also useless in terms of the person has far exceeded the ijaza. I mean, they're only an indication of qualification at a certain time. This ijaza only speaks for the time it was given, not after.
Yes.
And this shahada or graduation certificate only speaks for what happened at the time, not what happened after that. So
I mean, I think one thing is critical is that individual should now have the ability to look at the dalil. i.e.
Oh, like that you mean?
the army, he just goes there and the teacher says to him, okay, pray like this, do wudu like this, do hajj like this, without the dalil. Now we have the student of knowledge who's gone through some traditional learning, whether it be he's got tazkiyah from a sheikh or whether he's got his shahada from university. This individual now has the ability to look into the books to see what is the dalil for this this rukun, or this what do you call it, this issue. He can now access someone who can't access. And this is what I'm really want to get Ram's issue, the point through is about why and how we can minimize the ikhtilaf and the conversation between Ami people when they're not qualified to speak like you are. If you can't access the dalil yourself, then you're muqallid, and there shouldn't be no argumentation. Do you get what I'm saying?
There's two parts to this in answering that question, and I guess kind of it's interesting because although we kind of keep on veering towards fiqh, whereas what we're talking about is generic, any topic, any topic.
Yes.
So number one, there's the responsibility of the question, the one who is questioned.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a questioner who asks,
yes,
and there's one who is questioned.
Mm-hmm.
So the one who is questioned, be it a student of knowledge or a scholar or a mufti or an allama, or whatever these titles you wanna throw at the person, they have a responsibility of giving you the best of what they know.
Mm-hmm.
Now that may not be their own opinion, meaning maybe you ask them about an issue of wudu, and maybe they actually haven't looked into the issue personally themselves, done their own personal ijtihad, but they do know that their scholar or other scholars give this opinion.
Mm-hmm.
Then they can convey that to the individual. So what I mean by that is, when a person asks a question, they don't necessarily ask the question in a sense of what is your opinion.
Yes.
They just want to know the answer to the question. Because maybe the one who is being questioned doesn't have the conviction himself because he hasn't learned himself and looked at all the evidence on himself, but he does know enough to say this is the answer. Does it make sense? I.e., he is conveying to you what the scholars have said. He's not conveying to you what he says. And that's fine. Does it make sense?
Yeah.
Because as a student of knowledge, you can access the material. You can actually go to this book here and that book here and say, yeah, in this book here, by this scholar who is a scholar, he says X, Y, Z. So I'm conveying to you what he says. Like, for example, like this book here. The person studied Dalil al-Talib. Again, it's just a Hanbali book of fiqh. There's no evidence in it, but he studied it well. And now I, the one who studied this well, has now asked the question, what should I do? Can you answer based on what you studied here? Of course you can. Because the author of the book is a scholar. He is an alim.
Yes.
But it's important to make clear to the questioner how you're answering the question. I.e., Sheikh Mar'i Ibn Yusuf, the author of this book, says that this is the answer.
Yes.
Or this is the answer according to this book, or according to this material, or according to this madhab. So I'm conveying to you what I've studied. I'm not conveying to you my own personal conviction because I haven't got that.
Yes.
Is that fine? Of course it's fine, because the material I'm not studying Hanbali fiqh from a child.
It's from another sheikh. Yeah.
From another sheikh. So that's fine. But this is where I'm saying the responsibility of the one who's questioned is high, because if you're not at the level of answering the question personally on this particular issue, you need to make it clear that you're answering on what someone else has said. On behalf of the sheikh says, so-and-so said in this material, in this book, or according to the madhab. This is what you do. But, and this is the case with most scholars. I would say 99.9% of scholars on planet Earth today, even those who say big mufti, big alim, whatnot, 99.9% of them haven't looked at every single juz'iyah, every single issue. There are definitely issues that they've taken as what they studied and then moved on, because there's no need to look into every single issue. The scholars that they studied with are scholars, and they're given the evidence, and the evidence is okay, and I accept it and move on. So this is where I need to understand is that a person could be a knowledgeable individual in a section, without being knowledgeable in everything. Maybe I'm not an alim in everything, but I know inheritance. I know inheritance well. I studied it for like a good 2 years.
Yeah.
So I know inheritance. don't ask me about zakah. Don't ask me about whatever. I haven't studied that stuff, but I do know talaq, divorce, or I do know wudu. So it's possible to answer questions on juz'iyya, on certain topics, without knowing the whole picture, because you studied at one point, for example. So you can, that can be the case. So is there's varying levels to how a person can answer. But back to your question, someone asks you a question, can you answer the question? Yes. Number one, if you're still a young student of knowledge, just starting, you can answer by conveying what you've learned so far. Or better still, if the scholar you've learned from is available, you say, look, the sheikh is over there, here's his number, you can speak to him yourself if you want to get more clarity, whatnot. Or what many people do, they'll take your question, they'll frame it properly to the sheikh, and then bring you back the answer.
Yes.
These things happen all the time, but it's possible through your own experience, your own ijtihad, your own, what you've learned, you can answer yourself. Someone says to you, yeah, I did salah, but in my second rak'ah, I forgot to read the surah. I read Fatiha and then I did ruku'. Is that okay? Yes, it's okay, because the other thing is not a rukun, it's not even wajib. It's fine.
Yes.
Well, how do you know that? Have you got the evidence for that?
In the
No, I haven't got the evidence right in my head right now, but I'm pretty convinced no one I've come across differs with that one. So I don't have to go and phone up a sheikh. And this is important because even Abu Wahid will laugh at this one if he watches this. So many times you get, and it's so annoying, people ask me or Abdul Wahid, or would you recommend so-and-so, or not about so-and-so, but about this issue, and he might give an answer. And say, but have you asked the sheikh?
Yeah.
And he kind of like, okay, I mean, if you want to ask a sheikh, I can ask the sheikh, but if you're asking me, I can answer that, because I mean, it's not a big topic. It's not like it's not like
Yes.
it's not like some kind of new topic which only a few people know. This is known. Let me know. Can you touch can you touch the mushaf about wudu? I mean,
Yes.
every student of knowledge knows that kind of answer. And then they said no, but you have to return to the scholars.
Yes.
Brother,
And the
return to
dalil. I want the dalil.
the scholars on that which you need to return to the scholars. But you don't have to return to the scholars for every single thing. Are you telling me that I need to return to the scholars to know that if you touch the Quran with wudu or not? And here's a question. Here's a funny question to those who want to wave that flag of return. You must return to the scholars. Okay, imagine I return to the scholar.
Yes.
And I ask the sheikh, can I touch the Quran without wudu? And the sheikh says yes, because this is dillah. Now I'm asked the same question 2 years later. Can you touch the Quran without wudu? Do I still have to return to the scholars? I mean, I got the answer.
Another point would be, just say you are on the phone to the sheikh, and you ask him that question, and then you say to the sheikh, is it from adab to tell the sheikh and the sheikh, or you just take, because you're asking him as a sheikh, you take it, okay, I'm going to follow you.
Well, that's a good point. The issue of the dalil is a good point, because the issue of asking a scholar for his evidence, the reason why that's a silly thing is not because the question is silly. It's more to do with the questioner. So if a person who has no idea about evidence, he hasn't studied usul al-fiqh, he can't understand Arabic even, he doesn't know about, even if he knows the evidence, how to extract from the evidence, he doesn't know about the counter evidence, he has no idea about any of that stuff. Why are you asking about evidence? It's like me asking a physicist, is gravity really a thing, or is it an illusion? And he goes, yeah, it's really a thing. And there's a particle called a graviton which you're looking for. And then you go to him, yeah, what's the equation for that? Yeah. Bro, you got a C in maths, GCSE, and you ask him for the equation.
Yeah, know your place, isn't it?
So it's not that asking the sheikh evidence is a problem. It's who's asking the sheikh evidence. So for example, and this is not to put anyone down again, I'm not putting anyone down, but I'm saying if I was to ask the sheikh for evidence, it's because at some level I can understand evidence, because we spent 4 years studying usul al-fiqh. And the whole point of usul al-fiqh is how to understand evidence. So maybe in a particular issue, I'm unable to find the truth and I have to make taqleed because I'm not that well experienced. It's possible. But at some level, I can understand the difference between aam and khas and the mutlaq and muqayyid. I can understand the difference between certain things. I can get that. So when I ask for evidence, I'm trying to understand where it's coming from, because I have those tools. But the reason why it becomes stupid in the West, for example, is when people who don't know those tools
Mm.
or just beginning. They just studied waraqat, for example, just studied one of the beginning texts of usul al-fiqh, and then they're asking for evidence. But bruv, even if I give you the evidence, can you extract anything from that?
Yeah.
So let me give an example. Let me explain to you. So you ask an army person asks someone a scholar question, and he says, "Sheikh, can I have evidence?" Fine, you can ask that question, and I can give you evidence. I can even explain to you. And this is fi'l amr and fi'l amr yufid al-wujub. This is an order verb, and order verbs necessitate an obligation. So I've given you the opinion, I've given you the evidence, and I've even explained to you how I extracted the information from the evidence. So you've come out feeling, mashallah, I've gained, I've learned
knowledge. I've learned
got
knowledge.
I can now go out there and comport it. No, brother. I've only given you the evidence that I've come across, that I'm presenting, and my explanation of that. You haven't looked at the counter evidence. You haven't looked at the counter arguments. You haven't looked at anything else other than what I've given you.
And
so this one thing comes to the army asking us questions. It can make you feel better that you've been given evidence and that you're basing something, and I guess that's good. And I guess another perspective is that from asking evidence, this is actually one of the good benefits. It can prevent people saying what they want to say and not basing it in anything. So you can as an army, you can almost be like a filter. If the sheikh hasn't even got any evidence, then should I be confident in his opinion if he hasn't got the evidence? But my point is that even if he said to you, Allah said in the Quran, or Allah's messenger said in the Sunnah, that's still not the end of the discussion. Realistically, I mean, for you, it might be the end of the discussion, but realistically, it isn't really the end of the discussion. So there is that in it. So again, I'm not putting anyone down. I'm not saying the question is a bad question. I'm just saying that even if the question is answered with evidence, if you're still an army, if you're still a general person who hasn't studied, it's still limited in what you can do with that.
I mean, the point is that even at that stage where you have that dalil, you haven't got the opposing views. It may not just be opposing one. It may be an issue where there's 10 different opinions, but you've got the evidence from your ustad on this particular point, and then you're armed with the dalil from your sheikh, and you think you know the whole mas'ala, and then you're gonna conquer the world, and the point is that no, you don't know the whole situation, so you still can't go around correcting people. You can say, well, this is the opinion from my sheikh, but you can't say this is the whole mas'ala wrapped up in 2-3 sentences.
I think
they should follow me, kind of thing.
I think one of the bad reps that the Salafis have got over the time is not. I don't think it's to do with what they do. I think it's to do with the way they did it. So what I mean by that, for example, is give me a second, bro.
Father Sheikh. I wish I could lip read.
So we just got madrasa starting now, and some parents are trying to do it. So let's just try and wrap this up.
Okay, this is obviously chapter 1. We haven't really finished. Is a big
So what were you saying just now? Just a minute ago, you were saying about so the issue of correcting. So the issue of correcting is that the problem is if I see someone doing something wrong or what I perceive to be wrong, and I say to him, what you're doing is wrong.
Yes.
The approach is the issue, because when you say what you're doing is wrong, contained within those words is that you have sure knowledge of the issue. When both you, the one speaking, and one who's listening, knows you don't have sure knowledge. You only have what someone else says. So the approach is incorrect. A better approach would be, I heard so and so say something contrary to what you're doing. Maybe what you should do is have a view of this material. Maybe you might find it useful. Maybe you might find something that you can help yourself or not. See, the approach is different. I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm saying maybe, have a look at this. You might find something useful in that scenario. And I think that approach, if it's the same thing, I'm still correcting him. I'm just correcting him in a manner which acknowledges that I don't know. I don't really know.
Yes.
Things. but also you don't really know. But I can at
Mm.
least give you something that I know, and then you can use that information and make your own decision. And more importantly, I think this is the most important part, is that when you say what you're doing is wrong, we almost put ourselves in the position of a dictator when you have no
Yeah.
authority over someone. I mean, who are you
Yeah.
to tell me what I can and can't do in the first place? As in, humble yourself, akhi.
Yeah.
Just say, look, I feel what you're saying is wrong or not because of what I study, but maybe you want to look at this article and whatnot and make your own decision. As in, make your own decision. Now puts the ball in their court, allows that person to see, okay, there's other information out there. I can absorb it and I can make my own decision. So you don't make them feel as though I'm being told what to do. It's more like I'm being advised with more information. Okay, so I'm saying it's just the approach. I don't think
Yeah.
that the correction is the issue. I think it was just the approach, which is the issue.
I
But one
mean,
last thing I want to conclude, because I do have to because we
Yeah.
got online madrasa starting.
yes.
So I want to touch upon this last point with regards to the issue of the today. I mentioned about the 70s and 80s and 90s,
Yes.
and I told those times because that was before the internet.
Mm.
And I think today the internet is changing a lot of things, and I think we are starting to see a merging between the two, where you actually can have a university, which is also which is also personal. So a person, maybe imagine a sheikh, he can actually develop a curriculum, he can develop a whole structure, and even have almost like an institute kind of thing.
Virtual
But
institute. Yeah.
But it's not a university. So university is a location
Mm.
where the sheikh, he has his location. Whereas on the internet, you can actually merge the two, where we have an online location with an online structure, but also that personal kind of sheikh kind of attitude.
You can interact. You can interact with the students. You know the
interact with
students.
students
Yeah.
online with the kind of thing, and that's kind of what we're trying to do even with our madrasa and on our online fiqh class. And I think maybe what we can do is touch upon that more next week, because I think
Next
I would
week,
love
yes.
to touch more on that.
Yeah.
But like I said, we've got madrasa beginning now, and everyone's calling up trying to.
Yeah, I mean, it
Innit?
is a big subject, and I think we've just touched the surface of it. But
Yeah.
the main emphasis on this particular part was the fact that you can't really, because if to be honest, how Salafiyya was taught in the beginning, it was like you had yaqeen on every single issue, even though you don't know Arabic, you don't know hardly anything, and people went around and basically tried to, you know, own the religion. So I think there was a lot of mistakes made in the past, which we have to rectify, and even now, you know how Salafis are behaving online, and people haven't learned how to learn or how to carry that knowledge, and it's making a lot of mistakes. So I think if we can touch on that subject, and even as you said, talk about the online university and how that's going to progress, and how you particularly are going to teach knowledge, and how people are going to carry that knowledge going forward. So inshallah, we'll carry on this conversation next week, inshallah, in part 2. Sheikh, I know you're very, very busy. Jazakallah khair for your time. And inshallah, we will see you and carry on this topic next week, inshallah.
Jazakallah khair. Thanks for having me, inshallah.
Barakallahu fikum, Sheikh. No problem. Assalamu
Assalamu alaikum.
alaikum.